Good evening. It's about 7:30 on March 7th. This is a regular meeting of the Athens City Council. President Bias is absent, and I'm filling in for him. Jim Sands, I'm usually an at-large council member. We do have a quorum with all 7 members of council present. Although I'm acting as president now, I will be able to vote on issues that come up for a vote before council tonight. Our first order of business is a disposition of minutes from the regular session held February 21st, 2011. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, members, minutes are accepted. Now, communications. I have several communications that the clerk has handed me. First of all, I think members of council have received a note from the Division of Liquor Control regarding Courtside Pizza. All that they're asking is to change the names of ownership on the corporate listing, removing Les Cornwell as one of the owners, and be David alone. If there are concerns about this, we need to respond in writing no later than March 25th. So anybody who has concerns, approach me or the clerk or our legal Patrick Lang. Couldn't think of his last name, I'm sorry. Another communication, we are in receipt of a letter from President McDavis in response to our resolution regarding some participation from the university in purchasing our ladder truck. Short letter, dear Ms. Walker, the purpose of my letter is to acknowledge that I received your letter of February 8th, 2011 regarding City Council Resolution R0511 passed on February 7th, 2011. Thank you for sending this resolution for my consideration. We will evaluate the resolution and provide a response in the coming weeks. I look forward to continued dialogue with Mayor Weil and other City of Athens leaders on issues of mutual interest for our community. Cordially, Frederick McDavis. So we have a response, and we'll look forward to further response in a few weeks. And finally, we have received from the Athens County Municipal Court their annual report for the year of 2010. It's a fairly long, involved report. It will be on the table in council chambers if anybody's interested in looking at that. Other communications, Member Fall, you have something you'd like to say?
I'd like to have Anita Frederick appointed to the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. She has been working for a couple months with us, and she will be on replacing one of the other members that resigned recently. So I would ask council to appoint her to, I think it's a 3-year term.
Okay. Is that a motion?
A motion, please, to appoint Anita Frederick.
Second. All those in favor of appointing Anita Frederick to the what is the board?
Comprehensive
Plan.
Yes, it's the advisory
Commission. Okay. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Frederick, to the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. Reports and communications from other elected officials. We have a elected official. Actually, we have 2 elected officials. I forget, he's sitting right beside me. Okay. Auditor Heck.
No report.
Okay.
I have no report.
Okay. No reports. Move on to ordinances for third reading. Ordinance 1511, an ordinance amending the 2011 appropriation ordinance introduced by Councilmember Bain.
Mr. President, move adoption of 1511.
Second.
1511, and I thank Mr. Gosney for sharing his copy with me, will appropriate from the unappropriated balance the following sums: CDBG money into the 300 transaction class for grant administration and fair housing, $150 million, $1,500,000 to the ODOT grant fund for Richland 682, and that's about it, but it's a lot.
All those in favor of ordinance 1511 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Ordinance is passed. Next, for third reading, ordinance 1911, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit a fiscal year 2011 Community Housing Improvement Program, CHIP grant, application to the Office of Housing and Community Partnerships, Ohio Department of Development, and designating Hocking, Athens, Perry County Community Action Agency as the Community Housing Improvement Program Grant Contract Administrator and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Sands, I move that we accept ordinance 1911.
Second.
Okay, last week I wasn't here, but you had the first public hearing on this grant application. Greg Andrews from Athens, Perry, Hocking County Community Action Agency came and talked about how this CHIP grant works for community housing improvement. Are there any questions or comments regarding this ordinance at this point?
Just a quick comment.
Yes.
This is, and I mentioned this last time, but it bears repeating, this is an ordinance that will help increase the quality and affordability of housing in the city. So this is a step the city's doing to try to help do that. And it's something that the city's been asked over the past few years to work on. It came up at the town hall meeting, and this is part of the city's response to that.
All those in favor of ordinance 1911 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, this passes also. Ordinance 2011, an ordinance closing a portion of East Union Street between Court and College from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Friday, April 22nd, 2011, for a street fair in celebration of Earth Day, introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of ordinance 2011.
Second.
And as described, this will be for Athens' annual Earth Day celebration that will occur on Friday, April 22nd. And this year, the closing of the street will be on East Union between College and Court. It'll be closed between 3 and 9.
If anybody wants to talk about Earth Day? No? All those in favor of ordinance 2011 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Ordinance 2011 is accepted. Ordinance dated May 21st, 2011, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the International Street Fair, again introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of 2111.
Second.
And this ordinance will close the Court Street, as described, on May 21st for our International Street Fair. And the road will be closed from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and that's on Court Street from Union to State.
Okay. International Street Fair is an activity that we've been supporting for a long time in Athens. All those in favor of ordinance 2111 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 2011 is passed. Ordinance for second reading, one ordinance. Ordinance 1811, an ordinance amending ordinance 8506, creating an unclaimed monies fund and establishing guidelines. And we have some ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 2311, an ordinance amending the 2011 appropriation ordinance introduced by Councilmember Kuhn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to consider ordinance 2311 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The reason for the suspension is because this ordinance is connected to ordinance 2411, which will be coming up next. And 2411 is a prior year bill that has to be paid, and ordinance 2311 will appropriate the money to pay that prior year bill. And that's the reason for the suspension.
We're voting on suspension only. All those in favor of suspending the rules on ordinance 2311 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Suspension passes.
I move to adopt ordinance 2311.
Second.
Thank you. This ordinance has two parts. Section 1 amends the 2011 appropriation ordinance by decreasing Transportation Fund 214 Transaction Class 300 by $100,000 and decreasing the total appropriations by said amount. Section 2 amends the 2011 appropriation ordinance by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $65,000 to Transaction Class 214, Transportation Fund 214, Transaction Class 500, to cover cost of requisitioning pad, ramp, wrap, and interest associated with the GO buses. $3,100 to General Fund 101.207, Police Transaction Class 100, to cover cost of fourth quarter pension fund, and $4,600 to General Fund 101.208, Fire Transaction Class 100, to cover cost of fourth quarter pension fund, and increasing the total appropriations by said amounts.
Okay. Any comments about this ordinance? All those in favor of accepting ordinance 2311 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Ordinance 2311 is passed, and we'll move to ordinance 2411, an ordinance authorizing the payment of a prior year expense and declaring an emergency, introduced by Member Kuhn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to consider ordinance 2411 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Thank you. The reason, as stated before, is that we need to pay this prior year expense.
This motion is to, this vote is to accept the suspension of the rules on this ordinance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the rules are suspended on ordinance 2411.
Mr. President, I move to adopt ordinance 2411.
Second.
Thank you. This ordinance will authorize the auditor to expend up to $3,100 from General Fund 101.207 Police Transaction Class 100 and $4,600 from General Fund Fire 101.208 Fire Transaction Class 100 for payment of a prior year bill to the Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund. This is a bill from last quarter, I believe, the last quarter of 2010.
Yes, that we just got, and we did budget some additional money for that, but the total amounts of the bills are, like $95,000 or so. And so we added some money on, but the last one we paid was like $86,000, and we just didn't budget quite enough this year for an increase.
All those in favor of accepting ordinance 2411 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, ordinance 2411 is passed. Thank you. Next ordinance for first reading, an ordinance amending ordinance 2211, repair the city building fire escape and declaring an emergency. At this time, I'm introducing this bill. I would like to consider ordinance 2511 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Okay. This is money appropriated to repair the fire escape outside this room. A fire escape that is very necessary for groups of people like this, and we would like to get it done as quickly as possible. So we'd like to suspend the rules on this. All those in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Against suspension of rules? Same sign? Okay. Rules are suspended. Okay. I'd like to move adoption of ordinance 2511.
Second.
Okay, this ordinance actually just amends the amounts that were already appropriated for this activity. Section 1 is appropriating $20,500 to the general fund, other admin, instead of $15,500, which was already appropriated. Section 2 authorizes the Service Safety Director to expend up to $32,500 from the general fund, other admin, to repair this fire escape. This is an increase from $25,500. So we're adding about $10,000. We're adding about $5,000, I'm sorry, to the appropriation for repair of this fire escape. Okay. Any questions or concerns about this particular ordinance? Auditor, did you have any?
No, I don't think so. I think we've talked about this for a while. It's the fire escape for this room, so I think we're all on third floor. Would like to have that taken care of.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting ordinance 2511 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay. Ordinance is passed. And our last ordinance here is actually a one-reading resolution, Resolution 0911, a resolution supporting the collective bargaining rights of Ohio's workers and calling on the Ohio House of Representatives to reject Senate Bill 5, introduced by all members of council. I believe Councilmember Gosney is going to speak to this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is, as everyone knows, Senate Bill 5 that was recently passed by the Ohio Senate just last week. As it's moving on to the Ohio House of Representatives, we want to stand united in opposition to this bill, stand with the working families of Athens, the people that work for the city, that work in the city, our police officers, firefighters, teachers, nurses, stand with them in support of their right to collective bargaining and recognize the role of collective bargaining in building a middle class in this country. So I will read the bill. It has a few things in it, so bear with me here. Whereas the right to collective bargaining is a fundamental right of all workers and is essential to maintaining a strong middle class, and whereas the working families of Ohio are not the cause of the state's budget deficit, and stripping workers of the right to organize will not solve the state's budget problem. And whereas collective bargaining has widespread benefits for all working families in Ohio, including increased worker safety, fair wages, and increased access to health insurance and retirement programs, and whereas Senate Bill 5 is now under consideration in the Ohio House of Representatives, and whereas Senate Bill 5 would eliminate binding arbitration, which is the third-party process to settle contract disputes, and instead establish a deeply flawed process that gives management the authority to dictate working conditions and compensation. And whereas Senate Bill 5 would deny 350,000 public employees in Ohio the right to effective collective bargaining and to criminalize certain worker organizing activities. And whereas Senate Bill 5 would erode employee management relations, hinder the productive management of local government, and hurt working families. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of Athens. The City of Athens does hereby strongly affirm the fundamental right of workers to organize and negotiate their working conditions and compensation, and recognizes the broad public benefit that maintaining strong worker rights has for the middle class. The City of Athens requests the Ohio House of Representatives to stand with the working families of Ohio and reject Senate Bill 5. The Clerk of Council is hereby directed to forward a copy of this resolution to the majority and minority leaders in the Ohio House. This is important to so many people in this community, so many people in our region and in Ohio. I want to make one more comment before we vote on this. And It has to do with the division that has come from this, or that those that are advocating for Senate Bill 5. They're trying to divide workers. By this issue, they've done it with other issues in the past, divide public and private sector workers. It's important to note that the work of collective bargaining over the past decades has benefited union and non-union employees alike, and a rising tide lifts all ships. So we do stand in opposition to this. I failed to make a motion to adopt at the beginning, so I will make that motion now.
Second.
Do we have any other discussion? Member Paul?
I agree with this wholeheartedly. I'd like to make a point that many who support Senate Bill 5 have said that we need to do this in order to help plug the budget holes that are at the state level right now. I would like to note that in the last biennial budget, Strickland was able, with the bargaining process with the various unions, saved significant amounts without stripping the workers of their bargaining rights. So the process has worked, and there's no reason to strip workers of their rights in order to help with the unions do significant concessions and gave significant givebacks through this process. So it's not a broken process.
Other comments? Comments from... Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I too want to offer my support in passing this particular resolution and acknowledging our dissent or dislike of Senate Bill 5. I want to thank Member Ghazi for his hard work in putting this together. I think it's to the point, so thank you.
Any other comments? All those in favor of accepting Resolution 0911 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign in opposition. Resolution 0911 is passed by all members of council. This is the end of our agenda. We will do we have announcements? Any other announcements? Any committees that need to meet?
Yes, Environment Committee will be meeting next week.
Planning and development, please.
The mayor indicated to me in a discussion I had earlier with him that he probably will have something for finance personnel also. This is an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on the agenda. Do we have anybody here who would like to speak to council at this time? Okay. Seeing none, we will adjourn. Thank you.